If there was ever any question as to whether New Yorkers really care about the Moreland mess, I got your answer. New Siena poll here shows that most New Yorkers think that corruption is a problem in Albany, but most of them have no idea what that Moreland Commission was, let alone the whole scandal surrounding it. 81% of New York voters don't even know who the U.S. attorney is for New York. I'm talking about the man on the street, Preet Bharara. Mara's poll said that Governor Cuomo is leading Astorino by 30 points and change. However, the race tightens up when folks who know about the corruption probe weigh in. In fact, the Astorino folks sent me a note today saying, look, we're within 10 points. The problem is less than a quarter of the people know basically about the scandal, which explains all this. Now, I think if there's any exposure problems for the governor between now and then is the people, and you do a job, first of all, you work for Pataki, so you know how this is or isn't done, and then you also know, as right now in the private sector, about managing message. It seems so amateur hour, the way they handled this. First of all, it was so blatant that it magically ends on budget night that the Moreland Commission goes away. Now they reach out to the commissioners to say, go tell the media and everybody else that we didn't tell you what to do, which is interfering with an investigation by the U.S. attorney. Don't these guys know better? Doesn't Larry Schwartz know better, who is basically the right-hand man of the governor?
Well, as you know, sometimes you get into that little circle up there and you sort of forget what else is going on and you kind of do your own thing, et cetera, and that's what generally comes to bite you in the rear end a little bit. I mean, the problem is that dealing with the legislature is not an easy thing, and the governor's kind of been hell-bent on these on-time budgets, et cetera, so everything becomes a bargaining chip, et cetera, et cetera. Look, I think that the way they have handled it in the conversations back and forth, don't do this, don't do that. If you're going to have a commission, have the commission, let the commission go out on its own and find out what it's going to do. The problem that Rob has right now, is your poll tells you, is that, one, people aren't focused on the campaign. They know very little of Rob Astorino. Cuomo has a ton of money sitting in the bank. And Rob doesn't have any money to let people know what the Moreland Commission's about. So even if, you know, and this won't happen, but even if there was some type of indictment or something like that, you know, I still think that Cuomo's looking at it.
The problem for Astorino is that he's been screaming since the beginning of the year that everything that Cuomo does is a scandal, and so when you actually come to something that touches on potentially being a scandal, right, he is absolutely.
Jeannie, I actually think if he had $20 million to spend, right, you could come up with a compelling commercial of just the different things the governor said about this. Like, hey, commission can go anywhere it wants to investigate me. They'll get zero interference. I'm deputizing all of them. Then he tells Cranes, it's my commission. I can unappoint anybody I want. They'll do what I say. It ends today. It's up to me. The public, I think, could get their arms around this. Obviously, the poll says I'm wrong, but if it was money and they could make a coherent message, do you think there's any chance this has any resonance at all between now and November?
I think the only chance it has resonance is if Preet Bharara starts to come out with indictments of high-level officials or the governor, which I'm really looking at. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but looking at it, it's hard to imagine that would happen. I think that's the one way in which this has resonance. You know,
just one thing for me. Bharara's a really smart guy with a whole lot of ambitions.
Smart guy.
Why would he be doing and doubling down on this if there's no there?
Well, that's one of the questions. There is a great piece in Political magazine this weekend just about that very thing. I mean, we don't know what he has, but that said, people don't generally vote on these kinds of issues. And even if Rob Astorino had the money to make the commercial, that might narrow the polls, it might narrow the margin, it might, you know, impact it. But you look at the money that the governor has, you are hard pressed to come back.
You got to remember, you know, in 1994, George Pataki was leading Mario Cuomo at this time during that campaign. Yeah. So you know, you're dealing with a race where you're 31 points down, you have no money, you're at 23. A tremendous amount would have to happen to change it.
And also, it'd be nice if other Republicans were allowed to even support him.
Well, no, I mean that you know, look, I mean, people support and donors give to winners. I mean, that has generally been the case. My fear for Rob from the outset in this thing is that he's been such a good county executive that you wind up not losing and getting 31%.
You know what? I hear you. I think, though, he'll get a pass, even if it's a blowout this time, because nobody thought anybody had a shot. Now, I want to get into it.
Not if Cuomo spends $15 million telling people who Rob Astorino is.
And can
that's
we
the
say
concern.
kudos to George Pataki and Bobby Jindal for supporting Rob Astorino against Governor Christie? I'm sorry,
No,
but it's
I'm sorry, we don't have
insanity.
time for
that.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, I
all
know.
right.
He's going to kill me.
No, because we want to talk about casinos, another one of our favorites.
love
thing
to
here.
gamble, Richard.
And anybody who goes there, and Jeannie, of course, is one of them, don't get into the table there. You have to risk big to win big. That's the mantra. Anybody who plays. So players and people have to ask, is the reward worth the risk? And from a political standpoint, nobody understands that question better right now than the aforementioned Andrew Cuomo, who is betting big on the casinos coming to New York State and coming soon. But the question is, how risky is that bet, especially as a longtime industry analyst publicly saying of Cuomo, he's 15 years too late to the party on casino gaming, and it turns out the deck may be stacked against New York when it comes to casinos, Andrew, isn't that right?
And the state's going to have to deal with this sooner than a lot of people might think, Rich, because the calendar is really shifting this process into high gear. Especially next month, public hearings into proposed casino legislation and casino locations begin. Approval of up to 4 new casinos expected this fall, with the first new casinos possibly set to open in early next year. Location is the first big question, namely, are those decisions based on the help that casinos can bring to local communities or on their ability to maximize profits? The Catskills needs the help that casinos could bring, but casinos in Orange County, closer to the city, would make more money at the expense of the Catskills, which may explain why there are 6 proposed Catskills or casinos in Orange County and just 3 in the Catskills area. Another question, pitting New Yorker casinos against other casinos. The impact on casinos currently in operation, like Empire City in Yonkers. It's one of 9 so-called racinos that the state could be impacted by new Vegas-style gaming halls. So too the 6 upstate tribal casinos that are currently in business. Finally, serious questions about the overall health of the gaming business and fears that the market may be oversaturated, especially in our region, and it could get worse. There are now nearly 1,000 casinos in the United States in 39 states, dozens in the Northeast. Many are not doing well. 1 casino has already closed in New Jersey, 2 more scheduled to close in Atlantic City and certain to follow suit. Casino revenue down in Pennsylvania, even as the state has risen to number 2 in total casino revenue. Connecticut casinos are cutting costs. Foxwoods has eliminated staff already, and Delaware is spending $10 million to bail out their casinos as well. And yet, despite the climate, new casinos are likely to add even more competition to gaming in New York. As Atlantic City fades, there's talk of adding gambling to the Meadowlands or a new casino in Jersey City. There's a casino in the works for Springfield, Massachusetts, and there's talk of opening a second casino in downtown Philadelphia, Rich. And all of that would pull money away from the proposed New York casinos that Governor Cuomo is banking.
He's going to do it, though, right?
Oh, sure.
So my question is, forget about 10 years, 5 years from now. Is there a window of time they always do well in the beginning, or is there a chance this thing's going to be an unmitigated disaster and times the $10 million that Delaware's got to write a check to keep them subsidized? We're going to do the same thing.
They tend to do well in the beginning, and there seems to be little argument that they wouldn't be that way for the first year or 2 in operation. The real example, though, may be New Jersey with its internet gambling that they instituted last year. Governor Christie really banked hard on something like $700 or $800 million in money coming into the state that just never materialized, and they put the entire state at a shortfall budget-wise because they based their entire budget on the fact that there was going to be this revenue that didn't come in.
Well, the only downside, Richard, is that if you budget money that you never received. I mean, look, the
Which
problem
every
is
state does.
well, they shouldn't do that, and they should use the examples that Andrew just pointed out. Is that, look, Delaware is bailing out a casino. We should never bail out a casino. If they go under, they go under.
But these casinos will cannibalize each other to a certain degree. A casino in Orange County hurts Empire City and it hurts Aqueduct potentially, and it hurts the Catskills, which really needs the
I'm
revenue.
up against it. If you had to bet, Andrew, where did the casinos end up being?
1 in Orange County, 1 in the Catskills, 2 upstate.
No, there's definitely going to be 1 in Albany or Schenectady. There's 1 in Rensselaer or 1 in Schenectady. One of those is going to win out for a casino there, and then Orange County, as you said, and then there'll be the 1 out in Western New York along
the 1 in Orange County.
I think they're going to approve both. I think it's going to be Orange County and 1 in the Catskills.
If it's near the Woodbury one, that actually's got a chance to make it.
Catskills definitely need a casino.
They need something.
For a long time, they've needed a casino.
When we come back, the resignation of a president. 40 years after Richard Nixon left the White House in disgrace, Watergate still casts a huge shadow in American politics. We'll take a closer look at just how big a shadow after this.